Charles.
Charles. So this is what becomes of us. Eric was right. Humanity does this to us.
Not if we show them a better path.
You still believe?
Just because someone stumbles, loses their way, it doesn't mean they're lost forever. Sometimes we all need a little help.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, and welcome back.
Hello.
Everybody.
Welcome back.
Hi.
There's a lot going on.
There is a lot. A lot of things have just been dropped in the last week.
Oh my
Maybe
gosh.
less than a week.
And it always happens, right? Like, it's like we're about to record, we're getting hyped up on recording, and then it's like, we're going to release like a bunch of information.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but thankfully it released before we recorded, whereas sometimes it releases like literally
the day after we record.
Yeah. So, I mean, right up the top, some notable news here in the Marvel Universe. The Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 stuff is officially dropping everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And so the sneak peek posters, you know, somebody leaked the posters that show the white borders with the character focuses on them. Those are all out. The exclusive look is out. This interview with James Gunn, Karen, and Chris is out. Like, all this stuff is dropping left and right. And it's still a month out. So we've got I'm sure there are still a few other things coming down the pike. I'm very excited and also very sad
I know.
because it's happening so quickly. But yeah, so if you haven't yet, tickets are officially on sale. So go get you some of that. I have done my usual run, but I've amped it up from just the Thursday, Friday. And I was telling Jeff this before we recorded, but I'm doing the Wednesday triple marathon for the film franchise, and then perhaps rolling into a Thursday afternoon screening, and then the fan event on Friday evening, as one does.
I'm seeing it on Friday with Dai. She would have already seen it twice. By the time I watch it for the first time.
Dude. Man. I know, right? Like, ugh. I haven't. And it's rare that I've done that, to be honest. Like, 2 usually. That seems about normal. But like, to do 3 nights in a row of the franchise?
It's not even the 3 nights in a row. It's one's the marathon.
Yeah.
Both 2-hour movies.
Yeah.
The first 2.
And then the third at
Which
the
is
end.
2.5.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Insane.
I know.
Love it. Love that for you, though.
I know. Oh God, it's so devastating. So yeah. So aside that and the Guardians official takeover, Secret Invasion is officially invading as well with the new trailer that just dropped.
Yes.
I keep forgetting. It feels so cinematic to me that I keep forgetting it is a streaming
Show.
Is it a show or is it a
No,
movie?
it's a show.
It's a show, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I keep forgetting that it's streaming on Disney Plus and it's not a film thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, oh yeah. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure there's more to come with that as well. And that drops end of June.
Yes.
So they still have about a good 2 months
Yeah.
of
The
promotion.
trailer is good. I'm excited to see like where they go with the story.
Yeah, especially because it has been a minute since we've gone down the spy thriller drama vibe.
Yes.
Like, you know, with all this, especially this last week, you know, it's been 9 years since Captain America, the Winter Soldier has been released. So, and I feel like that was really the last true
I agree.
spy thriller that the MCU has had. So it's exciting to get that vibe back.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a few surprises that have been revealed in the official imagery as well.
Yes.
And so I hear some rumblings that Emilia Clarke's character has apparently been in the MCU already,
Yeah.
but just obviously not her.
Because, scrolls.
I know. When I was doing my homework, when I opened the Marvel Unlimited app for the comics, they now prompt you with a scroll thing, and it's like, get prepared for the invasion, and it's like, here we go.
I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, right. Like, you marketing. So aside that, I mean, just when you think, oh, okay, cool, here comes Spider-Verse. It's like, I can't handle it.
Just smacked you in the face at 10 at night, I think. I was like, what?
Monday. Yeah, I was like, oh my God. Oh yeah. And then Jeff just like very coolly like texted me like, so that Spider-Verse trailer looked pretty good. It looks amazing. Yeah. And so we were chit-chatting about this before recording as well. And yeah, they're throwing the curveballs. They're cutting the trailers to really kind of throw you off a bit of what the context is. Like, the first teaser I felt very much framed Miguel O'Hara, who's Spider-Man 2099, in a very villainous sort of way. But with this new trailer, or the official trailer, it definitely feels more like, oh no, there's something more.
There's something underlying
to
going
that
on
story.
here.
Yeah. So I don't know. We might see some things with Miles manifest one way or another, and that movie drops in June as well. So it's officially go time.
Yeah,
it's go time.
It's almost almost summer basically.
Yeah. Whew. Okay, well, hopefully we'll get to go to one of these premieres. Jeez, Louisa, come on.
We're still here, people. Haven't left.
Waiting.
Haven't left.
Come on, James. I know you can hear me. But yeah, so that's really exciting. And with that said, we can just roll on in to all the good stuff. So for this episode's giveaway, I racked my brain because anyone who really, really knows me knows that I have a bunch of X-Men stuff. And I have collected X-Men stuff over the years, and I still have stuff that is unopened and whatnot. And so initially I was like, oh, maybe we just won't give anything away this time. But you know what? For this episode, it's going to be a bit of a doozy. I have a near complete set of 1992 X-Men trading cards that we're going to give away.
Ooh.
To help kick off our foray into the X world, because Professor X, this is our first true X-Men character that has just very barely dipped the toe into the MCU world crossover. So it's got to be something special. So if you'd like to win that prize, just listen throughout the show for the key phrase and then DM us on Instagram or Twitter for your chance to win. Just shoot us a message by next Friday after this episode drops, and it could be yours. So, just a reminder, we're not experts, and we don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out. That said, right up front, if you were to print this character's full biography out of Wikipedia, I'd never thought to do this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it this time just to see what it looks like.
Really?
Because, Jeff always asks me, how long are we looking here? And I'll tell him how many pages I've written. So on Wikipedia, if you hit that control print on Professor X, he would be a solid 35 pages long.
Wow.
And that's just Wikipedia. And Wikipedia doesn't get too granular, right? They cover bases, but 35 solid pages. We're not doing 35 solid pages today.
That is a lot.
Thankfully. So that said, we are most certainly not going to get that extensive with this character, but, we'll see what transpires. Yeah. Count your blessings. So, Professor X, the man himself, leader of the X-Men, created by two names we haven't heard in a minute, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Wow, it has been a while.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
So back to the gold and silver age, mostly silver in this case. And the Professor's first appearance, X-Men #1, September 1963. And so now if you were to look up this issue, it's referred to as the Uncanny X-Men. But back in the day, they were simply the X-Men. And so I have the cover here for you, Jeff. It's pretty iconic. You might have seen it one way or another, like be it in a shop or on a trading card or in Ross.
Yeah.
Like they have those superhero like matted frames that you can buy. It's going to be that classic image. And so I don't know if you saw the cover price, but do you want to guess how much this comic cost back in the day?
Oh, this is the first.
The first issue, 1963.
I'm gonna go with good old trusty
Oh, no.
25 cents.
Oh, 25? Really? Well, friend, I gotta tell you, it's a whopping 12.
Damn.
Yeah, they
A dime and 2 pennies?
a dime and 2 pennies, man.
That's crazy.
Who knows, right? And so 12 cents back in the day. This one's got quite a value to it today. For obvious reasons, because it has been in pop culture. You know, they have been in pop culture for so long. And so scoping on Shortbox, the highest that I found available at the time of my homework was a CGC 4.5, which isn't great.
Oh my gosh.
But a 4.5, imagine, goes for $42,000.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's-
a 4.5, not even halfway.
It's not even halfway.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man.
And so on eBay,
says a lot.
yeah. And here's the thing, right? On eBay, I found a CGC 6.0. So this is 1.5%, 1.5 grade higher. The difference, 42,000, 80,000.
Almost double, pretty much.
Almost double, and it's only 1.5 more. So if you can imagine, it goes up from there. And so I don't know, you could probably get this book at auction. It's one of those instances, and we've talked about this as far back as our Captain America episode, that issues and comic books of this importance you cannot just go into a store 99% of the time and be like, oh, I'm going to take that X-Men #1. You have to go to auction to purchase it because they need they need all of that, you know, like,
Yeah.
are you going to follow through with the payment? Do you have this much money on you? And so yeah, you could imagine that this would easily come across as like if you got a 9.0, 9.5, I don't know, 2 million, maybe 3, maybe more, who knows, you know, it's a lot of money. And so whereas the lowest graded version of this book, a CGC 1.0, this is barely together, can still draw $6,000. And then on eBay, this is something new that we've never actually explored before. But on eBay, there was a CGC NG. So NG means no grade. It's so bad, there's no grade. So this person got their comic graded with an NG.
That sucks.
There's no cover. There's probably no back cover. You can't tell it's the comic unless you know the first pages. So even at a no grade, it's still worth $3,700.
What?
Yeah, so the book could be completely, what is that thing in that plastic shell? But because it's labeled and it's identified as X-Men #1, you can still get about $3,700
Who's
for
buying
it.
that though?
That's the thing, right? It's like, it's at that point, it's just somebody who's like, they want to say,
They just want to have
I
that.
have it. I have X-Men #1.
There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, there's a ton of people like that, right? It's the clout.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's an interesting thought. There's also another thing that I stumbled across that is quite rare, but kind of common for Silver Age. There was a CGC 3.5 listed as a double cover. So this is an old printing issue where on the
They accidentally
there's two covers.
just two covers.
There's double, like it just got stuck together. But even at 3.5, that double cover mistake can rake you an $83,000.
Because it's a rare thing.
occurrence, yeah. 3.5. It's like yellow pages, some corners are like torn off,
Dude.
staples are probably all of that, and you can still get $83,000 for it because there was just a simple misprint or a miss, I don't know what you would call it.
That's
Incredible.
crazy.
Yeah, and that's all because it's the X-Men. So I don't think it's too rare that you can find a Lucy, but there are a lot of folks, you know, that are just like, I have it, I didn't care to grade it, you can buy it from me. Who knows if they're legit, but I've seen one on eBay for about $3,900. So yeah, if you got $4,000 just burning a hole in your pocket, you can go buy an X-Men #1.
If you don't want to pay off debt, you can go ahead and own that.
Yeah, right. So there's that. So yeah, what was your first exposure to Professor X?
The OG himself.
The
man.
OG.
It had to be the 2000 X-Men movie, right?
Sir Pat's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Has to be.
So
Has to
nothing
be.
before that.
I don't think so.
Not even the cartoons.
I didn't grow up watching X-Men 97.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I knew it was there, but I didn't grow up watching. What
Yeah.
channel was it on?
It was Fox. So it was
was
11.
Saturday mornings, 11.
So Saturday morning, I think it was 10 o'clock.
I was switching between a lot of Saturday morning
Oh, really?
cartoons. So I went from like
Nickelodeon.
from like not even like those like the regular channels too, where it's just like Static Shock, Yu-Gi-Oh, Animaniacs.
Wow, Yu-Gi-Oh was on that far back? Really? Wow. Okay.
I think for me at least. I
Yeah.
mean that's what I. But
Yeah.
I don't remember religiously watching X-Men 97.
92.
92, sorry. There you go.
Almost 97.
Yeah.
97 comes out this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't really remember watching that and
Yeah.
being like fully invested. It was mostly
Yeah.
like, a lot of.
Because by your time, especially, it was reruns if they were still playing them. And then
I was watching the Jackie Chan animated show.
there was a Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I vaguely remember.
Yes. With like the stones and like these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was watching that a lot. So it wasn't up until like comic book movies were becoming more of like a thing when the X-Men, when the first X-Men universe started. So definitely Sir Pat's for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah. What about
Yeah.
you? What about you?
It's and I think I've said this before, but it's kind of like it's like a blur, right? At 92, it's a blur for me because I was about 9 years old, and so I can't quite remember if it was a comic book that I saw at Toys R Us first, or an action figure, or it was the TV show. So it was one or the other, but it was definitely almost immediate. So if it was the cartoon, then I immediately saw the toy or I recognized the toy and the comic books at Toys R Us. And like, oh, I saw that TV show. That's cool. I remember that. But yeah, very distinctly, I would say it's the show. The show kind of rolled around. It debuted on Halloween of 1992.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I was probably dressed as a ninja that time. And so it resonated with me very quickly. And so, yeah, after that moment, I did start to, I remember seeing it everywhere. And so that's when I used to tell my parents like, oh, I saw a store that has like comic books and stuff on whatever street that was, West Coast Fantasy. And so, they had like Mickey Mouse posters and stuff in the window, but also the X-Men. And so I recognized both things. And I was like, I want to go inside. And then that's when the whole thing of me pilfering like quarters from my parents started, because I would buy trading cards. And that's how we are here today, Like I would just be like, Mom, I'm gonna have $1. And I would buy a pack of cards and stuff. And so it really started with that, and it flourished even more because the cartoon, and then with that, then you start to notice things. And so even with the Ice Cream Man, like the Ice Cream Man would roll around, Ninja Turtles, you got all these cartoons, and they used to have this really, where there was an ugly Spider-Man, there was also an ugly Cyclops. There was a Cyclops one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that was like the fruity one. I think the one that I liked more didn't come until a little later, and it was like a full-fledged X-Men ice cream bar. And so it had like a biscuit with a hero printed on it, and the other part was just vanilla and chocolate with a chocolate X in the middle. And I don't know if this is lost on you, but other people might know, they had these WrestleMania ice creams.
Oh shoot.
Basically the same thing. They just rebranded it as X-Men. And a funny additional anecdote to that is that when I was, a wee baby, I collected those religiously because they came with different cards on the back. And so the box itself, you could just cut out the little card, and then it was a trading card.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. And so the X-Men one was particularly special because they're worth a lot of money now, I guess.
Yeah.
Because
I could see
that's
why.
the only time that they were available.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have a full set. I have a full set, and the very last card, or one of the cards at least, that's Jean Grey, I have still connected to a box.
Whoa.
And so that full set is worth, I don't know, I think $1,000 right now. And my friends at Cadence were like, Cadence Comics were like, cash in. And I was like, I don't know, man. That took me a long time as a kid. You know, like, I don't know if it's worth it yet. Like, maybe.
I mean, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, you might have to at some point.
At some point, yeah. And I was like, dude, but I never in a million years would have expected they would have been worth anything.
Yeah. No one thinks that when you're first buying stuff.
100%. I just kept them because I like them and I thought they were cool, and they're ugly, but they're cool. And yeah, so that my childhood was like absorbed in X-Men. Like, I just loved X-Men.
Yeah.
And my mom just kind of like almost resented the fact that I did skew so much more tomboy than just a regular girl. Like,
sure.
I liked Barbies, sure.
Yeah.
But I was like, I really like The Simpsons, and I really like TMNT, and I really like X-Men. And so, you know, I would have a Barbie, but then I would be like, I want a Bart Simpson doll. I want a Leonardo toy. And then I wanted X-Men stuff. So, and it didn't help that, you know, back in the day at the arcades. So when I was also growing up, Street Fighter was a big thing for me. And they also had an X-Men game. And so it's that giant one that has 4 players, and you could play for, you know, it's like an endless play. And you can choose from one of the classic X-Men. And so that was a huge thing too. So they were really, you know, they really ingrained in themselves in my childhood. So yeah, it's interesting to look back.
That is a deep.
Yeah. And you know, the wild thing is that I have this pile of cards here, and believe it or not, Jeff, I have so many, you know, a lot of my trading cards are X-Men skewing, that these sheets alone that feature Professor X, this is only the first folder. This is only from the first folder.
That's crazy.
So I pulled out 5 sheets of trading cards from my collection that feature Professor X in some way, just so Jeff could see them. And yeah, it's just from the first of 4 folders, and I think I have two other sets that I haven't even put in plastics yet. But since we're there, I'll pull out one of these cards and read you the backing. And, you know, it's been a while since we've actually had a tangible card to read. But so this one hails from the 1994 X-Men Ultra Fleer Ultra. I always used to get those mixed up. Fleer Ultra set of X-Men cards. And this says, Professor X may possess the greatest mutant mind on Earth, but his awesome mental powers are nothing compared to the greatness of his dream. A dream of peace between mutants and humans. The dream his X-Men fight for every day. Which is,
yeah. He is like the face of like the mutants, right? Like he believes in them.
That's what it is, right?
You know?
Yeah. The heart and soul of
like he
mutant
believes
kind.
Just because they're gifted,
right,
doesn't mean they're, you know, weird and should be ostracized. Is that a word? That the word? Ostracized?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know?
They shouldn't be divided just for being different, right? And so that's the whole overarching like analogy of the X-Men, right?
Yeah.
They're representational of the people that are not included, that are ostracized, that are different, or different race or different creed, you know, all
Which
that
is why I
stuff.
love Days of Future Past. That's my favorite movie.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, you know, so in doing this, I was only going to watch X-Men 1.
Really?
I was only going to watch, I watched every single one.
You're insane.
What did I do with my weekend? I was like, I watched the entire X-Men series.
There's a lot, dude. It's not like watching like a trilogy or something.
No, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And I didn't even watch the other films. I didn't watch the Splinters, you know what I mean? I didn't watch Doctor Strange or Wolverine or anything. And so I stayed true to the X-Men series itself, and I went the entire way.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's the you know, as we get into this discussion with about with Charles Xavier himself, here he comes. Here's our third mic. On Professor X, yeah, you're gonna find the overarching theme of him is exactly the same. It's exactly as you see it in the film. It's exactly as it read on the back of the card. But going back further, this character has been around since 63.
Long time.
This is literally its 60th anniversary coming up. And so this character has a lot of lore behind him, and where there was space to define stuff, they've officially started filling in those gaps, right? Because like how pure can the character be for so long without some writer coming along someday and being like, you know what, I'm gonna bastardize his character. And so a few of these nuances we're going to talk about right off the bat with his origin story. This first one is something that did stem a little more in modern times. And so when we first meet Professor X in 1963, he's already established he's in a wheelchair, he's bald, he's got telepathic powers, and he wants his team of students to help mutant kind and humankind alike.
Yeah.
And so in modern times, going further back than that, we get to see more of the origin story of this character. And so he was brilliant before he even popped out of the womb. And so a telepath of his prowess, it was revealed that he was actually a twin.
Oh.
And so while his mother was pregnant, it's one of those age-old incidents that you almost hear more about with animals, but he sensed that his twin was evil.
Oh.
And they had like a mental psionic battle in the womb.
In the womb? Oh my God.
So much so that the twin miscarried and was removed from the mother.
Oh my gosh.
The mother miscarried. And so Charles ended up being the only child that was born naturally. And, with nascent powers, which is basically he's had latent talent since the get-go. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward all that time, Charles is then 16 years old, and then he graduated from Bard College with a bachelor's degree in biology after just 2 years. So he entered college at 14 and he graduated with a degree. 16, he's fresh out. He's like, cool, great. I'm going to go travel the world, and I'm going to find people who are like me, because he's already aware that he has this ability to read minds and focus on that talent. And so at the root of this character, it's just like the card says. He dreams of mutants and humans coexisting peacefully, protecting humanity from evil mutates while safeguarding innocent mutants from human oppression. So again, it's like you're kind of thinking about the era that the story was conceived, right? 60s. Mm-hmm. So, the mingling of races and there's more inclusivity. And so they're very representational of that idea, even if they weren't featuring, non-white characters yet. They were trying to hone in on that story and that focus, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. So that whole sentiment is really something that propels Professor X from the get-go, stemming from the very research his own father was a part of. And so we'll talk about it, throughout this episode. But yeah, it's something that he learns from his parents and the unifying and acceptance of those that are different instead of being afraid or hating what they don't understand, which is a line and phrase that has been rewritten in the movies, in the comics. You'll hear it here and there. And that said, there are a lot of things that the films have amalgamated over the last 20 years that the character has been featured in live action, which is kind of wild to think about, for the record. Like, we're like, whoa, 10 years since, Captain America or whatever. Professor X has been in the cinematic universe on his own for 20 years now.
That's crazy.
That's half my lifetime, which is kind of wild to think about. But many of the base facets are absolutely true. And among those being that his longtime friend is Eric Lensher, aka Magneto, someone Charles met in his younger days while he was globetrotting, trying to find other mutants. And so, you know, I didn't want to get too far into things that weren't so important. But one thing that is very important is the aspect that he is indeed paralyzed. And it's interesting because, you know, people are like, oh, well, he's Professor X. Why can't he just make his legs move? And it's like, well, one, he's not necessarily a telekinetic, which is, that's the movement part. But it is a valid point. And so I found a funny anecdote about Professor X that best explains how he's paralyzed in the first place. And so during the filming of the first X-Men film, Sir Pats asked director Bryan Singer about Professor X's inability to walk. He was like, why is my character in a wheelchair? Why is he, you know, trying to understand? He's trying to understand the character, right? And so as it goes, this is now Bryan Singer. He says, well, the comic book says that after traveling to Israel, Professor Xavier went to Tibet, where he encountered an alien agent named Lucifer. Lucifer had holed up in a castle, so Xavier rallied the Tibetan fighters to assault the castle, and this angered Lucifer. And so he dropped a giant rock on the professor. And if you see the comic, it's like a giant, I don't know, like a giant concrete rectangle, like, you know, like something you see on the freeway. He dropped it on the professor. Yeah. And of course, it's from the hips down.
Of course.
and Sir Patrick just looked at Bryan and said, I like your version better. And so I guess I don't know if they had discussed the reason why at that point in the films, but you know, it didn't include an alien named Lucifer and all that crazy stuff. So you know, it's after that incident in the comics that Charles finally rallies his efforts to recruit the Young Mutants and then open his school for gifted youngsters that we know today. And so Professor X, of course, played by Sir Patrick Stewart in the original X-Men cinematic universe that is apparently Earth designation 10005.
Nice.
So they do have one. Okay. And then also portrayed by James McAvoy in the later films, and as a child by Lawrence Belcher. So yeah, first scene in X-Men 2000, directed by Bryan Singer with music by Michael Kamen. And then last scene in Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, 2022. 22 years after his debut.
That is crazy, man.
That's so wild, you know, and it's so crazy.
That's a long tenure for a comic book character.
It's gigantic. It's the longest, right?
I think it's funny, like, the fact that Charles and Wolvie are coming back.
Yeah.
Is like so like insane to me.
Yeah.
Like in a good way.
In a good
because
way.
Like when you watch Logan, you're kind of like, oh yeah,
that's it.
this is a nice curtain call for them. And then it's like, oh, when you open up the multiverse, anything is possible.
Anything is possible, right? Because then you don't have to, there doesn't have to be a definitive logical reason for anything. Yeah. Like, so what if he's older? Yeah. That's fine. He can be older. He doesn't have to be the fresh young Daisy that he was in 1990. You know what I mean? And even in 2000, like, sure, it's kind of mind blowing to go back and watch it because he was so much younger then. He was like 54 maybe.
Yes,
and,
probably.
You know, and now he's like 80, 90.
Is he 70, 80s?
I thought he was older. Maybe. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my goodness, he's been in this game for so long as that character, but not so much that it like completely overtook his career, you know what I mean? And he's done the same with George Picard.
I was gonna say, yeah. Like he's iconic role in Star Trek. So.
Exactly. And so it's been kind of wild to watch the character go through all these emotions and be in different areas of the Marvel universe. Yeah. You know, it's just the coolest thing to me. So yeah, like rewatching it, honestly, I felt like it still stands up. It holds up so well. The first one is like, you know what? Not even just the first one. Like, honestly, they all do. But I do cringe at the same time that I used to in 2000. Like, some of the puns are really bad. Sure. Yeah. But overall, oh my gosh, ahead of its time for real. Like,
it had to be.
Right.
It had to be.
Right. Like from the opening sequence, like what I thought was really funny. Maybe you can expand on this a bit. But like, was it just something in the 2000s where all the films were like, let's make like a genetic DNA CGI intro.
Yeah. That's definitely a thing.
Yeah, because I was like, wow, almost every single one, at least of the first three, have this dramatic introduction of like going into the DNA of a mutant, I guess, of some sort.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, because Spider-Man did it too, but with like webs and such, right?
Yeah.
It's so 2000s.
You gotta reel in the audience, you know?
Yeah, and so when I was rewatching it, I was just like, man, it was still so good. Like the leather, the tech. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's truly classic.
For 2000?
Yeah.
Y2K?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was wild. And I remember watching that like the back of my hand too. Like, and this was back in the day when you had to, there was no reserved seating. And so my friend and I went, I don't think we went to a midnight showing. Maybe those weren't around yet, but we got there on time, and the only seats that were left were in the first two rows.
Wow.
So the first time I ever saw that film, I was like,
oh, this is before reserved seating too.
Yeah, so
that was so stressful, man.
Yeah, super duper stressful.
Gosh.
Yeah, and so, but still, it was such a, it was such a moment, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so in that first film, we're introduced to Professor X, and you kind of get from the get-go that he is this incredibly powerful mutant, and he's got his team. Yeah. And the whole relationship with Magneto, played by Sir Ian McKellen. And then, how it's almost like the perfect storm, right? They're friends, but they're also bitter rivals at the same time, which makes for a good story when it comes to heroes and villains and all that. So of the three, the first three at least, which one is your favorite? Is it X2?
Oh man, that is tough.
It's tough, right?
It is tough.
Because let me just say that before I rewatched everything, I was like X2, 100% X2. And then I sat there after I watched them all, and I was like, actually, I don't know. Like 1 and 2 are incredibly strong.
I mean, then everybody remembers, The Last Stand.
You know what? I'm going to say it right now. It's not as bad as I remember.
It was pretty wonky.
Not great.
It was wonky.
It's wonky.
It was wonky.
Wonky's a great word for it. Because it's not great, but it's not as bad as I remember it being.
Jean Grey just went crazy in that movie. That's all I remember, man. And I just remember Logan being like, nah! I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, the whole dramatics of it.
That's so
the Phoenix
funny.
Force, right? And of course, not to shy away from the McAvoy era, but they then doubled down and did it again, with Sophie Turner.
Yeah.
And so rewatching it just for the sake of clarity, X-Men 2, X-Men The Last Stand, then Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, and then Dark Phoenix. And so I watched all 6 of those in order. And yeah, it's like, honestly, I couldn't pick a super duper favorite, but I think I'm gonna stick more with X2, because they did introduce more.
Yeah.
They introduced more characters, and also there are a lot of Easter eggs riddled throughout them. But what I did realize halfway through and then at the end, I was like, man, so the Sir Patrick Stewart era of the movies is very much a Wolverine trilogy, period.
Yeah.
Just call it what it is. And then the McAvoy era is very much a Magneto trilogy, because they're both,
that's fair. Yeah.
they're the goats of each era. To be honest, they're the standout performances. But McAvoy really did bring a lot to the character, to Professor X at least.
He did. He brought his own flair on it, and it's
Yeah.
like a fresh new take that obviously, because we've been so used to Sir Pat's, throwing McAvoy in as the young one, and he's not in his wheelchair completely the whole time when you first meet him. So I thought it was good.
Yeah, I feel like they also had a lot of room to character build with him, versus Sir Patrick. Like they did cover a lot of ground with Sir Patrick, but James McAvoy really got, like you said, he really got to kind of play around, like not only different eras, but also different adversaries, across the 3 films that he was in.
Yeah.
And then the crossover with Days of Future Past, which is
an insane concept.
Which is kind of wild because, like, people are like, whoa, Doctor Strange or Spider-Man, Far From Home. But it's like, well.
And I'm like, have you guys watched Days of Future Past?
Days of Future Past did it first. Yeah. And I remember the marketing for that alone was kind of mind-blowing because they had those posters where they would feature like Sir Pat's in the background, and then on the X is James McAvoy. And I was like, dang, they're really doing this. And and they did it very well.
I thought it was great.
That movie was really, really good. And so, as we get into the greater bits about this character, we have a listener comment from Ariel Tima. Who played him better, Sir Pat or Sir Hot McAvoy?
Well, I mean,
I think she has a preference.
Yeah. Very obvious.
Yeah.
Well, I think Sir Patrick is like the blueprint.
Oh,
so
100%.
I'm going there.
Yeah.
But like we said, McAvoy kills it.
Yeah, he
and
did
like what he was given with the character and where he took it.
Yeah.
I think that whole cast was amazing. Like that new young cast.
Oh, the first class cast.
The first class cast. Yeah, like what's I forget the actor's name for Magneto.
Oh, Michael Fassbender.
I'm thinking Eric, but I'm like, wait, no, that's
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like those two, great. Like if you were to ask like the younger versions of Sir Pat and Sir Ian, it's like those two right there. They killed it.
Yeah.
So, but I'm going Patrick Stewart.
I'm going Pat's too, dude. Because of course, now realizing that I didn't have First Class listed back there, but so 7 movies. Oh my gosh, I watched 7 movies. As great as the actors and the material and the modernization was in this newer era of X-Men films, there's just something to that nostalgia of the original OGs, like kicking it off, right? And especially when it comes to Sir Pat's, because I remember I don't think it was the same issue that they were speculating about Spider-Man's casting, but I mentioned this once upon a time on the show that they did an X-Men fan casting in Wizard magazine back in the day. And so this was before the X-Men film came to be, or let alone, the short list of characters and of actors playing them. And so I don't remember who was Logan, but like Halle Berry wasn't even part of the conversation. Everybody wanted Angela Bassett, funny enough.
Oh.
Yeah, she was the front runner for Storm. The idea of Storm. But among all the actors and actresses that they had, like ideally that the fans wanted for these roles, the one consistent person for Professor X was Patrick Stewart. And he was the only one that actually advanced into actually being in the official casting.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I was like, dude, and it's one of those pipe dreams, right? You're like, oh, that's who they want, but they'll probably never get him.
Yeah.
And then they got him, and then everyone was like,
what?
Mind blown. Yeah. And so that's kind of why he gets my vote as well. So do you think you're ready for a pop quiz?
Let's do it.
Okay. This one, I think
I gotta probably dig deep in the archives for this one.
I don't think so at all. So, how many feature films has Professor X been featured in between the Foxverse and the MCU?
Oh, that's a lot. Foxverse, like live action movies only?
Yeah. Like, how many movies have we seen Patrick Stewart in and James McAvoy in?
Oh my gosh. So we got the obvious, the first 3. X-Men, X2, Last Stand, that's 3. Mm-hmm. See, now I have to be like, wait, Origins. Was he in Origins? I don't think so, but maybe. I don't know.
Right?
And I'm like, oh, I don't know. He probably like popped up in like a scene or something.
Right. That's where they get ya.
I think he did. I feel like he did pop up in a small because that I forget that because I try to forget that movie. But I mean,
Which one?
Origins.
Origins. I know. Oh my god.
So I'm like, was he in there? Okay.
The best thing that happened to Origins was the fact that Ryan Reynolds decided to like play off of it.
Exactly.
It's the best thing.
Best part.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if he's in Origins. So I'll keep that in the back of my head.
Yeah.
So the first three. I know we got McAvoy in at least three, being First Class, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse. That's 6 total.
I'm just pointing at
Okay.
Jeff.
I was like, okay. So we got 6 total.
Yeah.
And then we have, my mind immediately jumps to Doctor Strange, Multiverse of the Madness.
Okay.
Like I'm trying to figure out because Apocalypse came out in 2016. 2016.
See, I love that you go back to the years for this. That's what drives me nuts. Like, wow, the fact that you can remember.
Yeah, because First Class came 2011 and Days of Future Past
it
came
that long
2014.
ago? Wow. Yeah. You're right, though. You're right.
I have too much unnecessary knowledge. And then Apocalypse 2016. Oh, it came out 2 years after Days of Future. That's crazy. So they immediately rushed into that one. Was that Apocalypse? What am I thinking of right now? Didn't a crappy movie just come out? A crappy X-Men movie just come out?
That's why I was pointing at you. I was like, you're missing one.
Oh, see, that's how I didn't even watch it. Because I was like, there was bad stuff about this.
Yeah.
Put that one in there. Because I know he made an appearance. But I know I don't know. It's not about him. So we're at 7. It's 8. We're at 8. Mm-hmm. God, X-Men Origins is really throwing me off. And I hate that that's the one that's going to throw me off.
I know, right?
I'm going to say, just for the hell of it, I'm going to say 9. 9 live action appearances.
Dang, really? I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's just under, unfortunately, from the answer. If you can believe it, I think it's 11 or 12. And so we're going to do a live count right here. So the films that Professor X appears in are X-Men, X2,
Yes.
X-Men The Last Stand,
Yes.
as I can't scroll here, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Damn it.
Yeah, he's in that one.
Okay.
X-Men First Class.
Okay.
That makes 5.
5.
The Wolverine.
The Wolverine.
Which is one that people kind of forget.
Yeah, well, obviously.
But it did give us the brown and yellow suit at the very, very end.
That's where that was.
That's where it came from.
Yes.
That's number 6. Number 7, Days of the Future Past. Wait, they didn't count First Class. I'm going to count First Class. And so then Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, Logan.
Oh my God. Wow.
You forgot
I totally
Logan.
skipped over that. That came out in 2017.
Yeah, dude. Yep. And then where did I lost
Logan
my place?
felt like you should know that. So I just
Logan's so
I just
good.
brushed over it.
This is the one that might have put you in a twist. Deadpool 2. James McAvoy.
Damn. Damn.
Yeah, it was that scene where,
cameo.
the X-Men Mansion cameo.
Why there's only 2 of you? There's a big mansion. Where is everybody? Yeah.
What did he say? Did he say budgeting or whatever?
That's fair.
It was Colossus and Professor X.
Yep.
And then finally the sad Dark Phoenix film.
Dark Phoenix. Yes.
Which again, I'm rewatching it. It's still not great, but it's not too bad. Mm-hmm. Sophie Turner really did bring more game to that role in that film than she had, I felt, in the previous 2 or 3. But they still missed the mark. The Dark Phoenix saga and the Phoenix saga in general is just such a big thing. It's such a big ordeal. Tough. And if you're leaving space out of it, I mean, just don't touch it. Yeah. Just don't touch it. And they kind of, they talked about it a little bit. But yeah, so the professor's been in all of those films over the last 20 years, which is kind of wild. And we might see him again. We are going to see him again.
We are.
Jeez Louisa. Yeah, so he's still not done. But yeah, who knows if we'll see him in future X-Men films, I guess is better clarification. So I put powers and paraphernalia a little higher up on our topics this time around, and so because it's so cut and dry, like what you see is what you get. You kind of everybody kind of knows what he has.
Yeah,
and so he's got a full range of telepathic powers, which includes telepathic illusions, cloak, learning, and camouflage, as well as mind link, blasts, control, possession, alteration, transferal. He can freaking transfer his mind into someone else's body. Like, that's so crazy. As well as mental amnesia, shield and detection, psychic wave manipulation, psionic blasts, absorption, omnilinguistics, and astral projection. These are all words I learned at 8 years old. For the record.
That's insane.
So I was like, Mom, astral projection and objective.
She's probably like,
what are you saying? What is that word?
Here?
I don't understand the word. And then, of course, he does have a bit of telekinesis. It's also known as psychokinesis, or PK, for the non-nerd. And so that said, Xavier is what is considered to be an alpha level mutant by something that they call in the comics as biomutative classification. And so it's this entire grid of classifications that you would, I don't know, list weaponry or something. And so it follows the Greek alphabet. And so alpha mutant, omega mutant, and all that stuff. And so the further you get, the more powerful the mutant is. And so, not to say that alpha is a weak level, but other alpha mutants include Cyclops, Storm, Sebastian Shaw, who Kevin Bacon played, which, by the way, Kevin Bacon was a mutant before he was Kevin Bacon in Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
That's crazy.
It's wild to think about, right? And even Namor. So you have to remember, Namor is a mutant. And so he is an alpha mutant as well as Professor X. As far as Omega level, which seems to be the most powerful, that would be one of his alter egos, which we don't talk about in this episode, but he has an alter ego named Onslaught. There's no easy way to say that story.
Sounds dangerous.
Just gonna leave it alone. Just read Fatal Attractions. That's a great series. That is on Omega level. They're almost omnipotent. Their power is so powerful it can't be registered.
Wow.
Phoenix falls under Omega.
That makes sense.
Let's just say that. So that's the comparison there. And as for gadgets and such, among what little the professor has or uses are his iconic wheelchair, sometimes
Obviously.
the hover chair, as well as Cerebro, which has been pretty much in every movie that he's in one way or another, And so they quite literally define the word in X-Men First Class as Spanish for brain. And so Cerebro itself is best described by Charles as a quote-unquote complex ESP, that's extrasensory perception, machine, which I call Cerebro, from the Latin cerebrum, meaning the brain. And its sole purpose is to aid in detecting new mutant brainwaves to help locate other mutants, both good and evil. So, it's just like in the films. He goes into that space, he puts on the doodad thing, and he finds all of the unique brainwaves and signatures that mutants have. And so it's like a giant World Wide Web for mutants.
Whoa.
And it's been the plot, the main point of plots for a lot of these films, especially, what was it, First Class? No. Last Stand? No. X2? I don't know which one. The one where it had Mastermind and it was the son and he was using him to find the mutants and kill all the mutants.
Yeah. I forget. Yeah. I remember that, though.
It's a lot of that, though. And so I know it's very, very quick. You ready for another pop quiz?
Oh, let's get right into it.
Okay, so Business Week once printed an article featuring the top 10 most intelligent fictional characters. Where on the list does Professor X sit?
Go.
Yeah. I love that Business Week.
What year was this?
I don't know which year. I don't know. I don't remember which year. But it's based off of comics.
Based off comics.
Yeah.
Damn.
Top 10.
Top 10?
Yeah.
I know he's not. I feel like he's not 8, 9, or 10.
He is not.
Yes.
Why is that?
I just feel like he's too like your power is basically your brain.
Yeah.
Like that's how big brain he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like he wouldn't he wouldn't be
Totally fair.
that low of the top 10.
Sure.
I'm going to go with my favorite number. One of my favorite numbers.
Uh-huh.
Number 4.
Okay. Fair. Incorrect.
Damn.
2 for 2 on the nose.
0 for 2.
0 for 2. So of the 7 Marvel characters on a top 10 list, that means only 3 characters were DC for the record.
Wow.
Of the 7 Marvel characters featured on this list, Professor X ranks lowest of his colleagues.
Oh.
Which is kind of, I mean, I too would have put him much higher up.
Yeah.
But I think that while he has brain power, perhaps he is not intelligent compared to the others. And so,
sure.
I know, right? I'm still kind of iffy on this one. So he clocks in at number 9 of 10.
Wow, I went the totally opposite way then. Damn.
It's kind of wild, right? And so, in order, at least from the Marvel perspective, this is who Business Week thought were the most intelligent characters. Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Hank McCoy, Hank Pym,
Whoa.
Bruce Banner,
Whoa.
and Peter Parker.
Whoa.
All topped Professor X.
Wow.
I was like, but at the same time, yeah, exactly. We were both kind of waving our hand a little bit. I mean, even Peter Parker, I'm kind of like, I don't know about that one. But everybody else, I'm like, maybe.
But I mean, I guess what's the specification?
Right,
You know,
right.
Like yeah, Bruce Banner's smart.
Yeah,
he's smart in gamma and gamma radiation and all that goody stuff. Tony Stark, he's smart in engineering and technology and all that stuff.
Yeah, and Reed Richards is supposed to be the most intelligent man in the world. So I guess I get that. Hank McCoy, I mean, the whole thing, I think the narrative is that Professor X didn't exactly build Cerebro by himself.
Sure.
Whereas Tony Stark
probably
kind of more or less built the Iron Man marks himself,
Yes.
and so I guess they're going by that kind of rule. And like Bruce Banner, like figured out the gamma thing on his own. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a dependency thing, but yeah, shocking number 9 of 10.
For being honest, that list would be so different today.
I think so too.
I think sure it would be top 3.
Oh, that's also true. Yeah, right. I think
before we go on a side tangent, but
yeah,
I think sure it would be top 3
for sure.
Now you can throw in Ironheart in there.
Ironheart, yeah, Riri, yeah.
So
yeah, I think
Black
you're right.
Queens, 100%.
That Black Girl magic.
So, but
yeah, dude.
Yeah,
it's wild, right? And I think there was only one female on the list, and it was Barbara Gordon, who is Batgirl,
okay.
Which was interesting. I was like, okay.
Was Bruce Wayne one of the DC characters?
I think he was, and I can't remember who the third one was, but you know what?
Brainiac?
It was Adam.
Oh,
So it was the Hank Pym equivalent.
Go.
Was number 10. And so Barbara Gordon, I think Babs was, I don't know, number 5 or something. But she was higher up too. And I was
my gosh.
Yeah, I was very shocked by this list,
man,
but I was like, that's
know.
cool. But yeah, Riri and Shirley, dude.
Like easily.
Easily. Oh, man. And so when it comes to the aesthetic of Professor X, as Wolverine would call him, is just an old cue ball. He's bald. He's always very sharply dressed. In many of these trading cards, for instance, he's in a wheelchair or his iconic yellow hover chair thing. And then, there's not much to it as far as aesthetics go. He's very much a professor head to toe. Whereas in the films, it's very similar to the books as well, but they really did lean into tactical. They went real hard with tactical looks. And so this is a joke we've told on the show a few times, but like in X-Men 1 even, like Cyclops, when he's firing up the Blackbird, and Wolverine's like, what's with the get-ups? And he's like, what were you expecting? Yellow spandex? And it's like, well, yeah, actually we were. But
Put it
yeah,
on.
yeah, right. And in the X-Men films, it's very black, very, very tactical, very, what would you even call it? Like almost spy-like, right?
Yeah.
They're just leather and zippers and all these finagles and stuff. And so it wasn't until James McAvoy's era that they started to introduce the yellow a little bit, which is a throwback to classic X-Men looks from the Grant Morrison era of the comics and such. But we've never seen anything that's true to the comics as far as X-Men goes. I think the most accurate one, shockingly enough, is Negasonic in Deadpool.
That's hilarious.
Like, I feel like the Deadpool costumes.
Yeah.
Those are probably the most accurate X-Men costumes.
Crazy.
Yeah, save for the Wolverine one, but we never see it on Logan. So hopefully that changes.
Ryan Reynolds has to throw in a joke. And he'd be like, you played Wolverine for 20 years and you still haven't put on the yellow suit?
Yeah, he's never had it. He's never had it. Oh, he's even had, which is very close to Patch, which is another moniker that Logan has taken on, where he's wearing like, the patch. And he's got the black and white, the tuxedo look on. But yeah, as for the Professor, while he's had his fair share of uniforms over the years, in the comics at least, his most recent outfit is the most outstanding of them all. And so I dropped a picture in our little doc here for you, Jeff.
I see it.
And so as you can see, this is, I believe, drawn by Pepe Larraz. It is Magneto, who is now adorning an all-white outfit, which is pretty iconic. Well, actually, I take that back. It's white and black, but mostly white. This is something that Magneto has taken on in more recent years. But Charles is very much standing next to him, mind you, in a predominantly black suit. It's like a bodysuit, and it's got like little detailings and the most iconic part of his outfit is the fact that he's got a helmet, which is Cerebro. He wears Cerebro walking around everywhere. You never see his face anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this is something that originated in one of the most recent storylines in the X-Men books, House of X or Powers of X, depending on which one you're looking at. And so Charles's look in this state emerged with the brand new take on the mutants as we know them. And so Charles himself, he died. Again, there's a lot of lore. So there was a few years back, the Phoenix Force came back, and it was divided into 5 parts, and it assumed 5 different X-Men. So it wasn't just Jean Grey anymore. It assumed like Cyclops and Emma Frost. And so as a result, Professor X, with the help of the Avengers and other superheroes, tried to take it down. He died. So as a result of that death, he was reborn, and he now just simply goes by X. Not Charles Xavier, not Professor X, just X. And so so he still has, his goal has kind of changed now. It's not just like the better of mutant kind. No, now he's kind of cutting it right at the better for mutant kind, not humanity, but just mutants. Yeah, and so in an effort to unite mutant kind under a single sovereign state, Charles and a select mutants occupy this sentient island off of the Pacific Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, called Krakoa. It's called Krakoa. And so what that translates to is the island that walks like a man. And so imagine, if you will, Groot, but more islandy. And it turns into an island.
Whoa.
Like a giant island that can hold the population of, say, I don't know, 10,000 people, 20, 100, 40 million. I don't know, whatever it is.
Dang.
But it's a sentient island. And now, with the help of unlikely alliances like, Mr. Sinister and Apocalypse and Mystique, Charles is importing all the mutants from the world and welcoming them to this island And so they all live on this freaking island together, devoid of human beings.
Yeah.
So they
That's
flipped
crazy.
it. Yeah, it's the inverted of what it started as. And so I think I mentioned this a while back that they're reborn with the help of this flower, this blossom that's found on the island. And so when they're reborn, say Cyclops was like, okay, I'm going to take the kids, we're going to go to space and we're going to fight this gigantic fleet of aliens. So they do that and Cyclops dies.
Oh my gosh.
And so what they do is that they've uploaded everybody to the cloud. Like legitimately, this is a TV show too. There's it's upload, right? So they've uploaded everybody into Cerebro in the cloud. And so they go, oh, Scott died? Okay, great. And then so they get his data file, they put it through the system. 5 days, a brand new Scott Summers is hatched.
Oh my gosh.
He's butt naked and he comes out with the memory that he last had before perishing.
Whoa.
And so it depends on when the person was last downloaded and they come back with that memory. So if they forgot to download somebody
Oh my gosh.
since like 1920, that person will have no recollection of what happened to them up to that point.
That's
It's so
insane.
wild.
It's so insane.
And so more or less, in a nutshell, the X-Men are officially immortal, which is kind of crazy because in the comics, they die so much and they come back all the time. Jean Grey has died like 12 times, dude.
Oh my gosh.
But now they just bring her back. They're like, doop, new Jean. And she comes out and she's like, all right, I'm back. and so this is what they've done on Krakoa. And so in Charles's eyes, what basically has happened is the more mutants, the better. And so they're just trying to repopulate and take their place in, the food chain, if you will. And so we got a question from Instagram, super fanboy guy. If Xavier didn't form the X-Men, what would he do with his life? Oh boy. I don't know.
That's a great question, actually.
Yeah.
I really don't know how to answer that.
Because, I mean, even in his world traveling, he was still like, let me find other people like me. Maybe he still would have done that.
Yeah.
And just helped people instead of trying to, I don't know, save the world.
Because I feel like all he wants to do is help people.
Right.
So maybe he might still be doing that just in a different sense.
Right.
But
yeah, I think so
other
too.
than that, that's
a tough one.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, if you were talking Krakoa version, he could be a gardener, I guess.
Yeah.
Just, harvesting flowers and helping again, but it all comes down to helping people. So yeah, I think you're right. And so this is where it starts to get a little weird, but we'll get to learn more about the professor from the roots. And so with his family, there are Dr. Brian Xavier, as well as his Sharon, his wife, who are Professor X's parents. And so Brian, his dad, was a wealthy nuclear researcher. And so along the storyline, we come to learn that the facility that Dr. Xavier was working in was actually a front for studying genetic mutations. And so this is what I said near the top of the show, is that Charles has kind of inherited this curiosity about mutants from his dad. And maybe he didn't know it. I don't know what the influence was, but Brian Xavier himself was studying mutants, and so unfortunately he met with an accident when Charles was 9 and died, leaving Sharon Xavier on her lonesome to raise her son until she married a man named Kurt Marco, and so it's then that the family relocated from their original home to this ancestral mansion in Westchester County. And so, let me tell you, 1407 Graymalkin Lane, Westchester County, New York, is the full address of that place. And I know it right in my brain. When Brian died, Sharon moved her family to that mansion, and that's what inevitably becomes the X Mansion. And so what we see in the films, that's all from the mother's side. And so the unfortunate thing about this, at least when Charles is little, is that, you know, when his mother married Kurt moved his teenage son in with them as well. His son's name was Cain Marco. And so for those who are not familiar with that name, he also he's not only a rival with Charles's children, but he becomes a full-fledged adversary later in life, because when he grows up, he is known as Juggernaut.
Whoa.
So both Kurt and Cain proved to be wildly abusive to the Xavier clan. And so, yeah, Cain would abuse Charles, and then Kurt would abuse Sharon, which unfortunately led to her ultimate demise. And she crippled not only under the abuse of her husband, but also the loss of her original husband. And so she died an alcoholic and of a broken heart, which is really dark.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's really sad. And so, you know, while the Juggernaut is present in a couple of the films in the cinematic universe, they never actually correlate the two as related in any way. But, you know, we'll see. And so I didn't want to dive into the friends aspect so much because, let's be frank, a lot of his friends are actually also lovers. So we'll keep them for a little later. But, you know, of course, there are his X-Men and most specifically Scott Summers, a.k.a. Cyclops. And so, yeah, I'm not even going to get into this. You know, like, we all know the drill. We all know, like, Scott's the soldier boy. He's the Boy Scout. He's Xavier's right hand. You know, he wasn't the first student, but he's very much like number one, you know. Of course, portrayed by James Marsden in the primary X-Men films, and then Ty Sheridan in the First Class era. Not much to say there. You know, further down the line, of course, like Scott, after he's lost a lot, and we do see a little bit of it in Last Stand, like after he's lost Jean, he's like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like he just kind of...
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so that's very close to the comics. There are moments where Scott starts to question the professor's like dream and his vision for the future and for his students, and he veers off. And even now, you know, as recent as the newer books, Scott's he's kind of doing his own thing in a weird way, but he's still under the purview of X and the X-Men. But a more notable friend in Professor X's life is Eric Lehnsherr, of course, aka Magneto, who also we're not going to get into because he has his own fair share of
definitely
of lore. So of course he's the truest of rivalries that's been tested time and again, from the smallest conversation to world-changing life and death. And so the dynamic is very well played in the films. Like I feel that both pairs of actors are very good at selling that they're friends, but they're also like, we don't see eye.
You know, like, yeah.
We're not on the same page exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and they do it very, very well. And, you know, of course, portrayed in the original X-Men cinematic universe by Sir Ian McKellen and then Michael Fassbender. And I gotta say, I love Ian McKellen. I think he did a fantastic job. But man, Michael Fassbender's
He really kills it. He
so
really kills it.
He really steals this. Like, I just feel like, honestly, if I were to have I don't need both Professor X and Magneto back full-fledged, but I would like to see more of Michael Fassbender's Magneto. I don't know how. I don't know what, doing what, why, where, when. I would just like to see more of him in a traditional sense, if you will.
I agree.
Yeah, but man, that man kills it. Even just watching him do the powers. And that's another thing that I think is incredibly well done with the X-Men films, is that they really make you believe that these people have powers.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like, I don't want to say that they don't do that in the MCU, but it's just so easy and so convincing when the X-Men do it. Like when he's holding out, it's like on the same level as Doctor Strange, right? when Doctor Strange is doing all the hand stuff, you're like, dang, he's a real sorcerer.
Yeah, seriously, I'd be like, oh man,
right? Like,
scared.
It's cool. Yeah, like it's really cool. And so when you see Michael Fassbender doing the douche and he's like, his fist,
oh yeah,
and he's
I'm
like,
like, oh, that's
and you're
scary.
just like, okay, he's about to jack somebody up with a coin.
100%.
It's just so good. And so I would love to see him in like a traditional or semi-traditional Magneto outfit, head to toe, and then doing whatever he does.
Yes.
That'd be sick. There's this entire, speaking of Fatal Attractions, by the way, I feel like the need to dish all the incredible storylines to you, because there's some wild ones, but one that they very briefly had an Easter egg for in the X-Men films between Michael Fassbender and Hugh Jackman was in Fatal Attractions back in the day. Magneto pulled all the adamantium off of Wolverine's bones.
Whoa.
And through his pores.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And on the cover of X-Men number 25, and it has a hologram of a Gambit card on it too. Like it just looks painful. It's painful because it's coming out of his nose. It's coming from, like everywhere. It's all the adamantium is just seeping out. And that's when they revert back to the bone claws for Wolverine in the comics. And that's why in Days of Future Past, Logan has his bone claws as well. It's a whole callback to that. And of course, Wolverine is built with the claws, but they did, they put in the not synthetic, but the adamantium after the fact. So yeah, that's me X-Men nerding out. I'm sorry. And so, I kind of put Eric Lencher at the very end of The Friends because it rolls right into notable adversaries. And so, again, this is Professor X is another character with a tremendous rogues gallery over the last 60 years. So we're definitely not going to talk about this at length at all. But some honorable mentions include Nimrod, Doctor Doom. We've said Doctor Doom a lot lately, which is kind of like, it says a lot about the character. He is a mischief maker. Yeah. Juggernaut, of course, the Shadow King. He is a gigantic one. And Proteus. So aside those, we're just going to call out a couple here. Mr. Sinister is a gigantic one. He is a pain in the butt. He's a master manipulator and truly one of the original and outstanding antagonists in the comics. And has been for decades. You could even say that he's been part of Charles's life since he was a child. And so Mr. Sinister, this is the character that people were like, oh, maybe Keanu Reeves could play him, or God, who was the other actor? There was another actor that was like, yeah, if I was going to play anybody in X-Men, I think it was Bryan Cranston.
Oh,
yeah,
maybe, possibly.
Yeah. And so Mr. Sinister is a scientist that hails from the Victorian era. So he's been around for a very long time. And he's more or less obsessed with genetics and evolution. And he himself was genetically altered by Apocalypse.
Whoa.
So there's a lot going on there. Mr. Sinister has been known to kind of dabble in Gambit's affairs, as well as more so the Summers family. Mm-hmm. So Scott Summers and Jean Grey, oof. Like, those are his favorite people to mess with. He's definitely, like, there's a current storyline right now. I haven't read it yet, but Sinister, is it Sinister War? I don't know. He's come back into the fold. When this whole Krakoa thing started up again, he came across as pretty campy and a little more flamboyant than he's ever been. But it's all coming to a head because I think he's going back to his old ways very quickly. And so, yeah, there's no cinematic counterpart for this character. But he was referenced in the New Mutants movie. There's this, his actual name is Nathaniel Essex. And so they refer to like Essex Lab or Essex Science or something in New Mutants. And so he's in that universe somewhere. Hopefully we'll see him in the primary MCU because, woof, if they get into genetics and mutants, I mean, to not have Mr. Sinister would be kind of wild. And so Cassandra Nova, this one is interesting because you know how I mentioned that evil fetus at the beginning of the show? That's Cassandra Nova.
Whoa.
So, not to get into gritty details, but though the stillborn, the fetus that once was, it began to mature in the sewers below the city. So once it got extracted, it became a sentient being on its own, and it started to mature and grow like a baby would. And over time, it became Cassandra Nova. So Professor X's evil twin. And so she was more or less hell-bent on getting revenge on her brother. She has about the same telepathic prowess as her brother. It's even allowed her to switch bodies with him in a very Dr. Octopus, Peter Parker-like way. And she used her power to combine with his own to destroy the Shi'ar Empire, which is an entire galactic empire, for the lack of better wording. So she's very powerful is what we're trying to say here. And then, this is it's a gigantic storyline. Not going to get into it, but when all was said and done, the X-Men discovered that Cassandra had actually put her brain into Professor X's body, and his brain was in her body, and her body was dying. And so with the help of Jean Grey and Emma Frost, save the day, yada, yada, yada. She thankfully has no MCU counterpart, but I would like to see that weird storyline in some way. I don't know if maybe it's too tropey, actually, on second thought, but no cinematic counterpart. And then, of course, we're not going to get into every granular detail here because, again, there are 7 movies at least with the X-Men alone. But just quickly revisiting of these the villains that we're about to mention, like, definitely tell me which ones your favorites are. So in the Stewart era, we had Magneto, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which is, Mystique and etc. Then there was William Stryker and Lady Deathstrike. And then there was Phoenix and the Morlocks. And then with the James McAvoy era, there was the Hellfire Club, aka Kevin Bacon and January Jones. Then Bolivar Trask and the Sentinels, which was what's his name? Who plays in oh my gosh, why am I forgetting?
Who plays Trask?
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage.
Yes.
Have you heard that? The Game of Thrones.
No, I have not. I have not seen that one.
When you have a second, Google Peter Dinklage Game of Thrones song, and it's the Game of Thrones song, but all they say is Peter Dinklage over and over again.
Of course it is.
Yeah. And then, of course, the final adversaries that they had in Dark Phoenix were, of course, the Phoenix Force itself and the Body, which is the character that Jessica Chastain played.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't see it.
But I got the gist of it.
They're basically Skrull. They're basically Skrull.
Oh.
The same thing, but a different species.
Oh, okay.
So they shapeshift, and but unlike the Skrull, they have they're so stoic. They have no emotion. So they're just hellbent on neutralizing anything that has an ounce of joy.
Oh, okay.
So it was actually, I remember when she first got cast, just a side tangent, I was like, oh, cool. Maybe she's playing Lilandra or somebody from Shi'ar or somebody from space, because they're she's galactic. And I was like, ooh, sick. Jessica Chastain is a space princess. This is dope. And then she ended up being a shapeshifter. She wasn't, her character wasn't even the shapeshifter. She was what the shapeshifter shifted into.
Oh.
So she was just playing she would just be like, Jean, tell me what you're thinking. She had no emotion. And I was kind of sad because she's better than that. But yeah, the Body are very much like the Skrulls. So of all of those, aside the Dark Phoenix ones, because you didn't see Dark Phoenix, which enemies did you enjoy the most, or do you think were the most satisfying from a viewer standpoint?
Oh, facing
the X-Men and all them. Yeah.
I mean, I was always a fan of. Now I think about it, watching, remembering back, it was always, the whole thing of Charles versus Eric.
Yeah.
That was
classic.
just Yeah. I never got tired of that.
Yeah.
Like ever. Like the whole like Jean Grey stuff. Because she's like this most powerful being ever thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was the Professor X versus Magneto.
Yeah.
Stuff that I was like, okay, where are we going? Especially, I forget which movie was it? Where was it X2? Where it was like basically them two against each other, and they formed like kind of teams because Charles wanted this. He's like, no, and then Magneto's like, no, you're trying to control us. We're gonna do our own thing. And he's like Eric, you don't have to do this.
Oh yeah, because he's wild card, right?
Yeah,
you're not sure what he's gonna do, if he's gonna actually follow through, or if he's gonna
because easily he can like go against you, so it's those were my favorite.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I think I didn't have a preference either way. The body are definitely on the bottom. I just feel like they didn't service them as well as they could have. It was definitely more about the Phoenix Force than anything. The Phoenix Force itself was definitely at my top, but I feel like cinematically they didn't do a great job of compared to what they could have done, especially. Because I think Sophie Turner did a great job with what she had, but the story was literally nothing but her destroying stuff. It didn't mean anything, and they barely show the Phoenix itself in both versions. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's ultimately what makes X2 stand out is because William Stryker, played by Brian Cox, I think is his name, the guy from Succession. Yeah. He coupled with Deathstrike, I thought was just so compelling. They 100% made it into a Logan movie, which is like, okay, that's fine. But I thought it was just really well done. And of course, the added factor that they brought in Nightcrawler and that whole fiasco and it was just so good. I think they're my number one. I tell you, when it first dropped though, I was like Deathstrike, and I thought Kelly Hu did an amazing job as that character. Of course, that's another character callback to Logan. So Deathstrike is one of his wives, Mariko Yoshida. She's a sister. I believe it's her. No, is it her? She's the sister of Silver Samurai. I could be getting my Yurikos mixed up. I'm not sure because there's a Mariko and a Yuriko. But yeah, she was in the and in the cartoon as well. And so again, it's chock full of Easter eggs. So it's definitely one of my favorites. Hellfire was okay. I mean, January Jones, I like her, but I didn't love her in that movie. Yeah, they're all right. They're all right, huh, Rocket?
You underestimate my feelings for you. But then you always did.
So this is officially giveaway time. So if you want your chance at some X-Men trading cards, shoot us a DM on Instagram or Twitter with the key phrase, "To me, my X-Men," which is an iconic line from the books. So again, "To me, my X-Men." Shoot us a DM. You could win. Woo! Woo!
Mother, is this a dream?
Let's roll into some love interests. Okay, so I decided right off the bat, this by no means is classified as a relationship, but Charles, yes indeed, once had affections for Jean Grey.
Wow. Which
very much kind of rattled me because there is obviously an age gap and his feelings for her stem further back. So there's no real indication of when he began to have feelings for her, whether or not she was like 16 or 24, like we don't know.
Okay.
It's a little awkward. They did introduce it late in the late 90s. But yeah, it has been confirmed that he did have interest in her, but of course she was all about Scott Summers, so it just never ever happened. Thank God. And of course, Jean Grey in the cinematic universe is portrayed by Famke Janssen in the original X-Men films, as well as Sophie Turner later on, and Haley Ram and Summer Fontana as young Jean in their respective films. Someone who isn't in the films, Amelia Vaught. So this woman, she's pretty integral to Charles's origins, at least before the X-Men came about. And so she more or less helped nurse him back to health after he became paralyzed. And so the two began to, they were seeing each other and they were sharing like vision for a while of just helping people. And, they came to a head because they began to disagree on stuff. The more that Charles began to recruit, young folks for his potential team, Amelia was more of the person I was like, you know what, we should be a little more low key about this. The world isn't ready. And so they split up. And this is one of those people that is one of the scenarios where Charles did try to use his powers to make her stay. Mm-hmm. And he manipulated her brain, and then he felt guilty, and he was like, I can't do this. And he let her go. But strangely enough, she was a redhead. So yeah, there's that. Another character with no cinematic counterpart, again, is one of my favorite characters from the books, Lilandra Naramani, who we've briefly mentioned before. She is part of the Shi'ar Empire, one of the royal families that live beyond Earth's atmosphere. So Lilandra was a pivotal character when it came to the Silver Age of X-Men, particularly Chris Claremont's Phoenix Saga, which is, again, truly iconic. And then that brings us to a more familiar name, Moira MacTaggert. So if you've paid attention to, especially the James McAvoy films, Moira is pretty present. In the comics, her origins have gotten way more complicated over time, thanks to modern stories. Before, she was just a Scottish genetic scientist who was 100% normal human being and just liked to help people. But now they've altered her origin story, and she's actually a mutant in this most modern era of the X-Men. And I don't want to get into it. It's so cool, but I want to get into it. So basically, she's known as Moira X, and the X stands for 10. And so it's
Moira 10.
Moira 10. So 10. It's been revealed that she is a mutant, and every time she dies, she's reborn. And so she's on her 10th life cycle.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But originally, when she was just a plain old human being, she helped create a mutant research center on Muir Island off the coast of Scotland. And she attempted to help young mutates, including Jean Grey and her own son, Kevin, aka Proteus, who ends up being one of Professor X's main adversaries later on down the line. And of course, in the cinematic universe, Moira MacTaggert is portrayed first by Olivia Williams in X-Men The Last Stand, but more notably portrayed by Rose Byrne in X-Men First Class, and then later in X-Men Apocalypse. And then there's one more who is a less familiar name, Gabrielle Haller. And so I wanted to add her in because she does have, she bears particular importance for a couple of reasons. In the comics, she was once a catatonic Holocaust survivor who encountered Charles and Eric after being abducted by Hydra later in life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's some interminglings here and there. And so Gabrielle and Charles fell in love, but the relationship dissipated very quickly over time. And Charles left, not knowing that Gabby was actually pregnant with their child. And so in the comics, Professor X does have a son. His name is David Haller. And so they actually have a cinematic counterpart for these characters. And so Gabrielle Xavier is portrayed by Stephanie I should have looked this up. Corneliuson. She was first and last seen in Legion. And so that was a 2017 FX TV show directed by Noah Hawley. Did you ever see that show? That's where Aubrey Plaza first made her first.
No.
Yeah. And so Aubrey Plaza was in it. And then also, God, I'm already forgetting his name. He was the Beast in Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, God.
That guy. But he was Legion. He played Professor X's son. And so in Legion, Gabrielle and Charles were married in the series, and it's a younger Charles Xavier, and there's a lot of time travel, and it takes place kind of in the 70s ish. And so in this version of the universe, Gabrielle suffered from schizophrenia, which then melded with Charles and his mutations. It produced this Omega level mutant named David Haller, who later adopts the moniker Legion. And so they've kind of covered that story more or less in a cinematic scope. So I don't think we'll ever see that, but it is definitely worth a watch. It's a little heavy because it's like an hour-long show, I think.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I don't know. It did get a few accolades. I think it was nominated for a lot of stuff back in its day. Like I think it got visual effects nominations and stuff like that. But they do cover the Shadow King. That's who more or less Aubrey Plaza played. And so the Shadow King, in a nutshell, is this incredibly powerful, I guess, semi-Omega level mutant who is like the Freddy Krueger. He occupies dreams, and he's on this. Oh my gosh! He's on another plane. He's on a, that's where he thrives, and he can assume people's minds. And he's crazy. So anyway, Aubrey Plaza played the character, and there's this really jarring, like they did this. Oh God, I couldn't even tell you. It's nightmarish. You would hate it because it's like a giant
nightmarish thing.
Yeah, it's like a giant horror head that used to be on this. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. I just want to send you a picture one day and then you'll be like, what is that? So when it comes to other versions and other media, yeah. So I wanted to get into Onslaught a little bit, but I didn't cover it here because, again, it's a gigantic part of this character. It segues into another world, quite literally another universe, an alternate universe. But you know what? You should go and read it. I'm not going to talk about it here. But I am going to talk about a little bit about another version of Professor Xavier from the animation standpoint. And so, of course, X-Men, the animated series, like we fondly talked about at the top of the show, although the character was voiced by David Kaye in X-Men Evolution and Jim Ward in Wolverine and the X-Men, perhaps the most iconic version aside the films was the 1992 animated series version where he was voiced by Cedric Smith. The series has spawned a handful of iconic memes. And so I think I posted one the other day on our Twitter account, but it's like Professor X in the chair and he's like, Wolverine, bring me a cheese pizza. And he had this Cedric Smith gave him this very almost nasally, like, Gene. Like he had a very distinct voice, which was like transatlantic, but New Yorker, but also English all at the same time. But yeah, that's definitely more or less the one of the more iconic versions of this character. He died at the end of the original series because not only budgeting, but it wasn't as popular as it had been when it first launched. So it'll be particularly interesting where they start off in X-Men 97. Because that's where it ended last time. So they're picking up right where they dropped it off. And yeah, we'll see what happens with the X-Men next. Because I hear they kill somebody off in the first episode.
Oh my gosh.
So if it better not be Gambit. That's all I'm saying. It better not be Gambit. Ugh, gross. And yeah, again, other versions of Professor Xavier. There's one huge one who does reside in Legion, portrayed by Harry Lloyd. And he's slightly younger than the age that James McAvoy played him in the films. Yeah, and nothing more to say about Legion, but it did run from 2017 to 2019. So if you want to get some obscure, almost avant-garde version of X-Men, you should check out Legion. It is kind of scary though. I'll say that much. It's trippy. And so that brings us to the future of the character in the MCU. We got a listener comment from Andrew Frank 17. Do you think they'll go modern with Krakoa Professor X? And also, do you think they will go classic Charles when they introduce the X-Men? And so for the first half, I can answer that. I don't think they're going to go modern. I don't know. I think it's too heavy of a lift. Yeah. Like, why is he walking around? Why can't you see his face? Why is he wearing
it's going to be jarring to people.
Super duper jarring, like too jarring. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be dope to see, but it's too jarring for someone who's expecting.
But why not flip that on its head?
That is also true.
Like, you've got in two versions, two great versions. Yeah. One who has walked.
Yeah.
You know, and then also ended up in the wheelchair, obviously. Yeah. One who started in the wheelchair, who was older. Now it's like, well,
yeah.
What if you just give him straight up, like, this man can walk? You got to give them all. You got to give them all versions.
That would be very interesting. But I will say the only thing that turns me away from it is because we live in a Mandalorian world, right? Like, that show, like, it's hard for me to watch now, knowing that Pedro Pascal is not the one in that helmet. And so,
what if he is, though?
You can tell when he is, which is funny because he stands a certain way. But in the same token, like Ant-Man, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Quantumania, you see their faces all the time because they're like, nah. We need to see the face.
Yeah.
Would they then, with the Professor X of Krakoa, not have him wear the Cerebro thing? Because you gotta see the money shot. Like, so that kind of dilutes
like he's
the
walking,
character.
but he has to have.
But you have to see his face because that's how Hollywood is, and so that's what I'm worried about. Because like you have to.
But like he needs that Cerebro if he's walking. Yeah.
That's the entire thing of that version of the Professor is that you never see his face. So that's why I'm almost like they'll never do it.
True.
Because they're not going to bring James McAvoy in just to see his nose and his mouth.
I mean,
right?
I don't know where they'll go with the new X-Men, let alone Professor X. Because that is tough.
If you had to guesstimate between regular wheelchair with the X's on the wheels to yellow hover chair. Whereabouts do you think they're gonna drop him?
I mean that yellow hover chair in Multiverse of Madness was sick,
and that's from the animated series.
Yeah,
so
that is sick.
Yeah,
but then the X chair is also very cool. Like me personally, I'm all for hovering floating chairs.
Sure.
So when I saw that, it looked like a nice 50s car in Multiverse of Madness. Like a roadster of a car.
You can just vroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it, but it doesn't have to be Sir Pat's.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I want more of the yellow chair. That's just me. That's just me.
Hey, we can agree on that one. And so almost was. So this was an interesting look back because like I couldn't remember myself who had been up for it, but I did find some names. Oh. And so Terrence Stamp, the original General Zod from the Superman films. Mm-hmm. Apparently he was up for the role. He later played Stick in Elektra. Oh. So the blind man that helps Daredevil become Daredevil. He ended up playing that character. Mm-hmm. And so says the rumor mill. The king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, apparently wanted to play Professor X. Mm-hmm. Because he was a huge fan of the comics back in his heyday. Stan Lee, however, recalled the scenario a little different and said that Michael Jackson wanted to be Spider-Man. And so we've talked about that before, and let's just say none of it happened. But aside that, there's that's about it. Terrence Stamp is about it, and then it just went straight to Patrick Stewart. But in the future, it could be Giancarlo Esposito.
Saw that.
Yeah, aka Moff Gideon from The Mandalorian, speaking of, as well as Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad, who is my favorite character from that show. So apparently he's expressed great interest in taking the helm in the future of the X-Men films or whatever the character may be featured in, if Sir Patrick Stewart should not return.
That's interesting. That's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and at first I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I think he has the chops to play that character.
Yeah.
But I was like, maybe like not a carbon copy of what we're used to, right?
Yeah.
But then I saw a fan Photoshop of him like as Professor X. And I was like, actually, yeah. He looks great. Like he could be bald if he really needed to be. Mm-hmm. Him in the hover chair. I was like, That's cool.
Yeah.
So why not? But yeah, I would love to see Giancarlo. He's incredible. He's an incredible actor. So why not? As for suggested reading, dudes, I mean, I'm not even gonna.
She listed a bunch throughout the episode.
Yeah, it's like, and that was just like surface level, right?
Fatal Attractions.
See? But yeah, all the big hits, you know, the original Uncanny X-Men. You want to go a little deeper, go into Jim Lee's X-Men Series 2 1992 edition. Of course, Fatal Attractions. There's Executioner's Song. There's a bunch of different titles. Just look up X-Men and look for the heavy hitters, and that's what you should be reading. As well as, I'm going to say it because it is very controversial, House of X by Hickman, and that's the newer stuff. A lot of the stuff that Hickman has wrote, people are like, the X-Men are weird now, but you know what? I enjoyed it. Way to go, Jonathan Hickman. Let's go. And so with that said, that's the end of the show.
Woo!
Oh,
Damn. I feel like there's so much more that you left out.
I did. There's so much. There's just too much. You know, like
he's a very he's a very just like prominent, strong character. Like he is the leader of leaders.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Like you have like the leader of the Avengers, you have the leader, the Justice League. Then you have Professor X.
Yeah.
Leader of the X-Men.
Yeah. Because again, and we didn't even go into the fact that he has crossed over with the Avengers. He is part of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff, we didn't talk about any of that, and it's because he has such a vast wealth of backstory.
Just
it's
know he is a powerful person.
Yeah.
He has wisdom like no other, and very strong. Even though he may be in a wheelchair, he will mess you up.
Yeah, unless you're
and he will get into your head.
Unless you're Wanda Maximoff.
Yeah,
because she did take him out.
Yeah,
pretty hefty.
Just don't piss off Wanda Maximoff, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, but yeah, really quick, going back to Doctor Strange, for instance. I mean, imagine, well, not even imagine, but recall the excitement when people figured it out. Like, that's Professor X.
Yeah,
like the internet went ballistic,
insane.
And then he was just like, "Yeah, that's me."
He's like, "Oh, I didn't realize I was such a big deal, but yeah I guess that's me."
Yeah. It's like people figured out that it was his ear.
Yeah,
which
his
is
shoulder. It was his shoulder.
Yeah, incredible.
We should tell him the truth. You don't think people are gonna like know that's you? Or figure out that's you?
I mean, I didn't until you told me.
And I was like, ooh, because I saw it and then I heard it and then I went on Twitter, obviously.
Oh my god!
And then I was like, yeah, it might be.
I wanted it so bad. I didn't believe that it was real until it was like full on right in front of me. I was like, oh my god.
We should tell him the truth.
We should tell him
and then
the truth.
friggin', John Krasinski just popping up,
Oh my god, made my life.
Reed Richards here.
So good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the end of the show, guys. Our next episode, we haven't 100% made it concrete yet, but it will be another character study, perhaps one from our polls that we have recently put up.
True.
Either on Patreon or social media.
True.
So if you see a poll, make sure you give a vote. That said, we are Groot. Salute to Ed, Tyler, Jenny, Robin, Ashley, Joe, Liz, Ariel, Eve, Nats, the Arachnid, Katie, Laura, Andrew, Choco, MG2112. That one's always fun. Claire, Melanie, and Andrea. Follow us on social at STRKCNTRST. And if you like what you hear, please review, rate, and subscribe.
Once again, thank y'all for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
You did it.
Did what? Logan, don't you have a class to teach?
A class to teach.
History.
History. Actually, I could use some help with that.
Help with what?
Pretty much everything after 1973. I think the history I know is a little different.
Welcome back.
It's good to see you, Charles. It's good to see everyone.
Well, I had a promise to keep.